say with like pay and promotion, etc., that actually sometimes women are their own worst enemies in terms of, you know, we just think that we're not good enough?
Yes, in fact, we know that that's true. And so far as there was a study of exactly that, actually, that found that men will apply for jobs if they fit 25% of the criteria, and women will wait until they have 100% nailed down before they apply. There is a lot of statistical evidence to support that. I think the important thing is to recognize where it comes from. It's not because women are just a bit weaker, they don't step up, they're a bit wishy-washy. It's partly because of social conditioning. We, for example, start paying children higher sums of pocket money from the age of 7. So is it any coincidence that men think they are deserving of more when they reach the workplace? We know that girls are 5 years old when they first start worrying about the size and shape of their bodies. We know that a quarter of 7-year-old girls have dieted to lose weight, and that number goes up to 80% by the age of 10. We know that the number one magic wish of teenage girls in America is to lose weight. In other words, society sends us messages from an incredibly young age about our worth and what it's derived from, about how we'll be judged as women. And of course, we internalize those, and of course, we adopt coping mechanisms. So yes, it is partly true that women are less likely to be assertive or to put themselves forward. But what's really important, I think, is that the answer to that is not necessarily simply to say, step up, women, be louder, put yourselves forward. Because we know from numerous studies that when women do behave in that way in the workplace, instead of being seen as assertive or leadership material as men are when they exhibit identical behavior, the women are more likely to be seen as out for themselves, as shrill, as a harpy, as a bit of a browbeater, a ball breaker. And so they tend to actually receive negative compensation in the workplace as a result. So the solution is to change the workplace, not to change the women, which is exactly what Ellen Powell did, for example, when she realized just that at Reddit, that women were less likely to feel able to negotiate for themselves. And the same is true when it comes to reporting workplace sexual harassment. When people see that figure that just 20% of those who experience it feel able to report, they often say, well, women should just speak up, problem solved. But the same study found that of those women who did report it, 3/4 said nothing changed, and another 16% said they were treated worse as a result of coming forward. So you have to fix the systems instead of penalizing women still further for the adaptations they've taken on to survive in what is already a very gendered world, if that makes sense.
Sometimes when I hear talks like this, I'm just like, I know. And I'm wondering, is there any kind of advice you can share with people to, I guess, support other people that are doing these kinds of actions, or I guess the tangible work that actually makes a change?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think tapping into kind of big feminist networks who are supporting different campaigns happening across the UK is a really good way to do that. I'd suggest the Fawcett Society or Level Up, which is a grassroots campaign group supporting feminist campaigns across the country. And they tend to have very specific pragmatic actions that you can take each month to very directly input support into a particular campaign. But I'd also say that you're not alone as a woman in particular in saying, you know, I know, and I'm tired. And the real answer to your question is that we need the people who are least affected by this directly to be the ones to step up and take action. So actually, this isn't about calling on women to continue to deal with their own experiences of oppression and discrimination. It's actually about calling on the critical mass of men, because of course, we're not talking about all men carrying out these acts. In fact, what we're really talking about, and I think what's most exciting, is the vast majority of men, the critical mass, who would never dream of behaving in this way themselves, but also likely haven't witnessed it and perhaps haven't experienced it, because it does often happen in a deserted copy room late at night or a quiet street in the dark. What that means is that they might not be aware it's going on. And what's interesting, I think, for me is how do we galvanize them? How do we let them know this is happening? How do we give them an idea of the extent of the problem and engage them in tackling it? Because really the answer is we need men to be talking about this, not just weary women going over it again and again. Women know, but a lot of men don't. So we need every man who hears this to go out and talk to 4 other men. We need men to be prepared to disrupt this in the spaces that men are in. And we need men to be continuing this conversation with the young men and the boys in their lives as well. And really, I think that's how we'll see real change happening.
All its devastating impacts aside, if we're talking about kind of how COVID has changed the world in the last year, would you see it as a positive kind of step forward for women with things like flexible working and working from home? What kind of impact will that have?
Well, I think you can certainly hope that the flexible working revolution will have a positive impact for women. Of course, women have been asking for flexible working for years and been told that it isn't workable and couldn't possibly happen. And the pandemic has proved now that men need it as well, that actually we can do it and get along. So there's a positive to that, of course. But unfortunately, it's not quite as straightforward as that. So of course, if you look at the broader impact of COVID, we've seen a real rollback on gender equality. About 44 million jobs globally have been lost because of COVID. 31 million of them have been women's. Women have been twice as likely, working mums twice as likely as dads, to lose their jobs during the pandemic because of childcare, because of suddenly having to become teachers and domestic labourers and everything else as well. We've seen a rollback in terms of women's participation politically globally, and a huge jump in the number of women experiencing online abuse when they move to home working. So I do think it's a complex picture. It's not a straightforward, simple one. So there will be speed bumps, and we shouldn't assume that it's all plain sailing. But yes, I'm hopeful that, of course, it might open up more possibilities for women with more caring constraints that require them to work from home.
That was so interesting, Laura. Thanks for doing that.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, great to see you, Laura. Thanks so much.